Hi everyone and welcome back. So recently I was publishing some videos about the full stack interview questions on the hackerRank. Like you get full stack questions on the Node.js, React, Angular, Vue.js, and you have to submit that by solving all the test cases, right? So similarly, let's do some certification test live on the hackerRank. Okay, that this one is particularly for the Node.js basics. I mean, what should be your approach and how should you solve these tests? Okay, I mean, certification test is not something like you are getting certificate and all. You can ignore that. But yes, this is helpful to validate your skill in a particular technology. You can try SQL, you can try Java, you can try Python. All these certification tests are available here. Like I recently tried Vue, REST API, React, JavaScript and all, and then I'm starting this Node.js basics. Okay, so we just go through this. I will submit my information and then take test. Okay, so it will, so here I am, and it is 60 minutes, 2 questions, Node.js basics. Let's do this. And let's see what kind of setup we need to do. All these things we can understand. Sometimes we need to clone the code locally for making this whole process faster, because you have to write the code in the web IDE. So if you are good at VS Code, then you can just clone the code and get the code locally and just do this. And here go to the test. So here find recipe step, order processing, these two apps we have, and we have like 1 hour of time. Let's get into this. Okay, so what do we have here? Okay, we have to submit it here. Web ID is still loading. We can use local ID via Git also. So what you need to do is you need to copy the Git URL. So click here to copy, and you can actually do one thing. You can clone this code and you can start writing there. So let me just clone this, and then we will read the problem statement, what it is talking about, and then we will solve it. Okay, let's open that. So it is talking about, the problem statement is find recipe steps. Okay, so when we are taking this locally, this is going to help us. So here we have cloned the repository. I mean, clone that through the GitHub link, and now we'll go through the README and we'll try to understand this. So this is our README file. We will see the preview. Okay, so let's go. This is a find recipe app. The request, we need to create this route, I think, and that is taking ID as a parameter and elapsed time as a query parameter. So this is path parameter, this is a query parameter, and the output should be in the format of this. Okay, so the basic fundamental of these kind of problem statement is you read the README file properly, because if you are not able to understand it, then read it once. And in the bottom there is always an example which talks about why the output looks like this. Okay, so if the ID is passed in the URL is missing or not valid, then send 404 not found. Okay, and if the lifetime query parameter is not present, then default should be 0. This is very useful information. And we are going to have this kind of a mock data where ID, name, steps, and the timers. Okay, and we need to write a route something like this: steps ID and elapsed time. The ID parameter should be used to filter out the result based on the ID. Okay, we have this mock data. Based on this ID, we will filter out the data. And if the ID is not found in this mock data, then 400 not found. Okay, if we found, then we need to return the result. Okay, now this index 0 is the output. Why that is coming? So first of all, let's take a look onto these two parameters. recipe ID and elapsed time. Okay, so recipe ID is 4. Okay, we got the record from the mock JSON, and the elapsed time is 11. So elapsed time is 11. So now we will look into these timers. Timers are like 0 0 0 0, right? And if we look at the elapsed time 11 here, elapsed time means we need to return the index from the timer array where this elapsed time is less than. Okay, so the first index is 15, which is greater than the elapsed time. That means from the first timer index only you will get the order delivered, right? So the output will be the index, which is 0. Okay, so now let's write this. What we are going to do is in app.js we will add this router, recipe steps, recipe router, and inside the recipe router we will write our logic. So here we are going to write our route. So we got the router.get, and we are going to take ID as a route parameter, and here we have a request and response, simple express logic. Right, now what we will do is we are going to get this ID, which we can get request.params.id, and we have elapsed time, that we are getting from the query parameters. So how to get the query? Request.query dot elapsed time. If this is there, otherwise assign the 0. Okay, now basic condition is that is already in the test case. If this is not a number, the ID is not a number, you are passing something garbage in the ID, then we will just say response.status. We will say 400 bad request and .send not found, because there is already a test case written for this to validate this. Okay, now we have this mock JSON somewhere. Yes, based on this ID we will get the record. Let's say if we are passing ID 1, then I get all these timers, and if the elapsed time is 0, means the output should be 0. Here let's see another one. Yeah, here elapsed time, let's say you are passing 50, so 50 is greater than 15, so the output should be the index 1. I mean whatever the closest index you are getting. Okay, so this is the recipe, and here we are going to get the selected recipe. So this const selected recipe. Now what we can do is we are getting the recipe as a mock, recipe dot filter. We are running a simple filter, and in the filter what we will just do is give me the record where ID is same as, we can convert this path parameter as a number, so triple equals will not break. So we got the selected recipe. Right, now if we have selected recipe, then we will do some checks, because there may be a scenario where you will not get a selected recipe, the ID you are passing 20, which is not there in the record. So in that case we will say response.status 404.send not found. And if we got the record, now we will get the timers from selected recipe. So we got the timers from selected recipe. I'm talking about these timers we have in the JSON object. So once we got the selected timers, what we need to do is we just need to get the index. So we can write one method, index, by passing all the timers, and elapsed time which we got from the query parameter, which will be by default 0 if you are not passing. And we can write a simple method, function get index, and this function is taking 2 argument, right? This is just going to iterate onto the timers and will give you which particular index this elapsed time is matching. Okay, we are passing timers, we are passing elapsed time, and it is going to give you the index. This is what we need. Once we got the index, we can just say response dot status. We got the 200 status, and we are sending index, that is the output. Okay, now final thing is we need to make sure all the test cases are passing. The edge cases are ID is not a number, send 400 byte request. If there is no selected recipe, send 404. And now we need to run the test cases. Because the end goal is to execute all the test cases, and here we can see the tests, and tests gives you a lot of information. You can see here the recipe ID is alpha string, so it should be not found, bad request. Here it is recipe ID is 5, elapsed time is 0, so it should give us the response equal to index 0. Here elapsed time is 4. So all these are like happy path scenarios. If our APIs are responding properly, then we should get the response, and we got some 500. So let's see that, why that is coming up. Okay, here we did a mistake. Yes, recipe is an array, and we are trying to consider it as an object. So if the array length is greater than 1, means we got selected recipe, then you need to get the 0th index. Now it should work, and then only we can destructure the timers, because currently it's complaining that timers is null. Okay, run the test cases again, and this time hopefully they all will pass, and we will be done with this basic exercise. Then we can jump to another exercise for the Node.js basic certifications. Okay, things are good. Okay, thanks everyone.